mark my words, y'all, the pendulum will swing back. Right now, we are in an era where companies want to capitulate to the current administration. And to me, that is never a good strategy, because there will always be a need to make sure that within a workplace, people feel like they have the tools that they need to thrive. People feel supported. People have an equal opportunity to be hired, to be promoted, to receive training, to receive mentorship. And as long as people are coming to the workplace with differences, there will always be a need for people to help manage these differences. Jay Nice on the mic, back with another video. I wanted to make this quick video around an article I wrote about Goldman Sachs. I saw a couple weeks ago that they, like many other large organizations, have rolled back or stopped their diversity policy. Goldman Sachs had a policy that required board members to be from underrepresented groups, right? They would take that into consideration with board members. So they looked at things like gender identity, race, and other underrepresented and marginalized characteristics. And they announced recently that they would no longer be doing this. They reached some sort of agreement with a conservative law firm. And I just want to talk about this really quickly and how it is a signal of a larger trend that we have been seeing, not even since the re-election of Trump, but just over the last few years. As some of y'all may know or may not know, I'm an organizational psychologist. So I have a background in organizational psychology. I have a PhD in it. And the work that I do centers around workplace equity. I've had a consultancy since 2018. And the work that I do is I partner with organizations and institutions to help them to provide employees with the tools that all employees, but specifically employees from minoritized communities, need to thrive. I help organizations identify what barriers are preventing employees from thriving, and then developing strategies to remove these barriers. And so I am also a writer. I write a lot around topics related to workplace equity, and I wrote an article about this. And I think what's happening is an obvious signal that we've seen, especially in 2025, where a lot of these large corporations have moved away from anything with a modicum of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We saw this with Amazon. We saw this with John Deere. We see this with so many organizations that have essentially, a lot of them are capitulating to the current administration, but a lot of them are actually taking the mask off. They only did DEI because it was trendy, and now they're like, thank goodness we don't have to keep doing it because we didn't want to do it in the first place. On the one hand, I think I could see how having a criteria that required diversity of board members can lead to tokenization. Tokenization is the phenomenon where a person from an underrepresented group is propped up, but they are only propped up for optics, right? You might see where a company will appoint the only Black person on a team to a certain position just for diversity, cosmetic diversity, and just for the optics, right? And so I could see a world, and I'm sure it's not outside the realm of possibility, where companies that claim that they care about diversity only focus on these characteristics so that they can be seen as companies that are progressive, right? And they don't really care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they do it because they feel like it's profitable. So on one hand, requiring diversity could lead to putting people in positions that they are not ready for and that they're not prepared for just for the sake of diversity. It could also lead to things like the glass cliff. Is a phenomenon that specifically women of the global majority, but Black women experience, where they're propped into leadership roles during times of crisis, and they're not given the tools that they need to support the corporations that are going through crises. And there's so many examples of this that we can think of. And what ends up happening is that when they prop up these Black women or women of the global majority, or just women period, into these positions, and they don't do well, and they're not able to turn organizations around, then they can point to that and say, see, that's why we don't put women in these positions, or that's why we shouldn't have never appointed a Black woman, right? I think what happened to Dr. Claudine Gay, who was the former president at Harvard University, is a great example where the school was going through a lot of turmoil, and I don't think that the institution really had her back. So policies that require diversity, in theory, are good and sound good, but they're not good if they're not also coupled with practices and policies that ensure that equity is foundational to an organization. There's no good in hiring people from minoritized and underrepresented backgrounds if you're not going to give them the tools that they need to thrive within an environment. And too often, corporations focus only on the diversity optics because they know how it looks from the outside, and there isn't enough done to ensure that the people that are being propped up as leaders, especially those from underrepresented groups, have the tools that they need to actually succeed. I think it's good that the masks are falling off, and companies that never really cared about DEI no longer have to fake it. Because I always think that I like the more overt type of exclusion where people don't try to hide, people don't try to mask things, people just show up as who they really are. And what the era that we're in right now is an era where companies and corporations and organizations and institutions are showing their true colors, and they're showing us who they have always been, but who we chose, many of us, myself included, chose not to see. I will just also say that there will always be a need for diversity, equity, and inclusion. As long as in the US there are people who come from different backgrounds, who are different races and ethnicities and different ages and different gender identities and different everything. As long as those differences exist, which they always will, because we are not a homogenous country, as long as that melting pot exists, the need for DEI, regardless of what we call it, will always exist. What this is teaching us is that our DEI efforts cannot be surface level. We have to address the systemic issues. Doing things like having a bunch of people on the board that are from underrepresented groups, Black faces in high places, is not really transforming a system. And the sooner we learn to stop accepting the little crumbs of, oh, diversity here and diversity there, the better off we will be. We need to see change at a foundational and systemic level. I know I'll be back here talking about another corporation that is getting rid of some DEI program soon. But again, mark my words, y'all, the pendulum will swing back. Right now, we are in an era where companies want to capitulate to the current administration. And to me, that is never a good strategy, because there will always be a need to make sure that within a workplace, people feel like they have the tools that they need to thrive. People feel supported. People have an equal opportunity to be hired, to be promoted, to receive training, to receive mentorship. And as long as people are coming to the workplace with differences, there will always be a need for people to help manage these differences. So that is where I'm going to leave off. If you are somebody that's interested in understanding more about how I can help an organization or a corporation with managing these differences, I am going to leave my email in the description box below. But that is where I will leave off today's video. Thank y'all for checking it out. And if you want to read my article or the 500 plus articles that I've written on these topics, I'm going to link them in the description box below. But I will see y'all in the next video.